Good Wednesday morning. It is 9 o'clock, and that means it's time for the Weather Desk. Today's top weather headlines. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, broadcasting from Southeast Virginia in our studios here at 13 News Now in Norfolk, Virginia. We serve Virginia Beach, all of Southeast Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. And again, you found us here on the Weather Desk. We've got a lot to talk about. It's a very flood-intensive show because flood headlines have been making, the news all across the country. We've been focusing a lot on Texas and the recovery from those catastrophic floods that just claimed so many lives here around Kerrville in Texas. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we're also going to talk about the potential for additional flooding here in Hampton Roads. We do have a weather impact alert for today and tomorrow. More storms, gusty winds, and yes, potential flooding with some slow-moving thunderstorms. So we'll talk about that. As I mentioned, we will have updates from Texas and another round of flash flooding producing some fatalities, this time in New Mexico. We've got an update from that area as well. We do have a dramatic story of survival to share with you from Texas. Family rode out those floods in their attic, and there was at times water coming up through the floorboards. So you'll hear more about their story. It is really something to hear. And then we're going to talk some more about general flash flooding facts, how this happens, how we get these incredible water rises so quickly. We'll have that. We'll have a tropical update, and we're going to talk about some international weather, specifically southern parts of Europe scorching, and that includes Greece, some of the measures that they've gone to overseas to deal with the heat. So these are just some of the topics. Of course, we'll have a more extended look at the weather across Hampton Roads, the severe weather outlook all across the country. There's a lot to cover in the next 25 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and start off, though, with a look at our weather impact alert, and this is for the Mid-Atlantic, specifically Hampton Roads in Northeast North Carolina. The threat is going to be slow-moving thunderstorms producing very heavy rain both today and tomorrow. Now, today it's mainly going to be north and west of the Hampton Roads metro area. But we have that chance, especially into the evening, for some flooding rains. And then again on Thursday, a little more widespread activity farther south and east. The impact, again, heavy rain potential for flood advisories or flash flood warnings and some gusty winds also with some of the strongest storms. We'll begin with the severe weather outlook. And you can see we're going to come back and revisit the entire national picture here and talk about the various threats. But I wanted to start off by zooming in to Hampton Roads with our weather impact alert. There's a level 2 threat for parts of the eastern shore, back across the northern neck, the middle peninsula. Areas shaded in green, this is where isolated severe storms will be possible. But those areas off to the north and west, scattered severe storms, that's the level 2 or slight risk. The green area here, that's the marginal or level 1 threat. You get down around the Albemarle Sound and at the Outer Banks, and the Storm Prediction Center does not have you outlooked for severe weather. So that's good news. If you've got plans to get out to the beach, or maybe you're going to be doing some type of water activities out on the Sound, you'll be in better shape down that way. But I would say late afternoon and especially into the evening as you go north and west, you need to watch for potential strong to severe storms. You take a look at the satellite and the radar images, and overnight, look at that heavy rain up around Richmond. We did have some advisories and some flooding, and I was looking at the rainfall totals since midnight. And up around Richmond, they had about 2 inches of rain. That came over the first few hours after midnight. So again, that was enough to produce some flooding, and that's kind of the nature of what I think we're going to see during the afternoon and early evening tonight. Some more types of rainfall like that where you could have locally a couple inches of rain. Other areas won't see as much, but the potential's there, and again tomorrow. As we take a look across our region, again, you can see the potential, and I've turned off the green down across here. This whole area would be shaded in green as well. I just want to show you the areas where it is likely and even very likely that we could see additional flash flooding. This is out to the west of our viewing area, but across the Piedmont of Virginia and into the extreme north central part of North Carolina, it is very likely we could have some more flooding rains developing later on. It's likely we could also see some in these areas shaded in yellow. This is where we have the flood watch in place. So out to the west, Petersburg, Richmond, and areas west through Farmville, South Boston, Lynchburg. If you are tuning in from those areas, know that some heavy rain, some slow-moving thunderstorms could produce. There's a pretty good chance you're going to see some of those heavier rains. Not that everybody's going to deal with it, but that area, anywhere in that red, pretty good chances that you could see some heavier downpours. And again, we have to be mindful that we could see some of that from the eastern shore through the peninsula, middle peninsula, northern neck, and western parts of the south side. Now, again, there's kind of a level 1 threat for some additional heavy downpours, but it's not as great here as it is farther west. All right, as we take a look ahead to tomorrow, I'll go ahead and add the green back in here so you can see that level 1 threat. Still, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, up through the eastern shore, down around the Albemarle Sound. But that area of yellow, where it is likely we could see some flash flooding, you'll notice it extends farther south here as more of that storminess should be developing south and east. By Friday, it's just a level 1 threat across the entire area based on the outlook this morning. So we'll continue to watch that. We do have the weather impact alert, as I mentioned, for both Wednesday and Thursday. So the chances for those heavy rains and the slow-moving storms, it will be there. You've got to stay weather aware. That's what we're really stressing. Now, we've got a flood watch, and that includes the northern neck and the middle peninsula, as well as portions of the peninsula. We're talking areas up around York County, back over to James City County. You get out northwest of that through Richmond and down through Petersburg, Emporia, along I-95, I-85, all the way down to the Raleigh area in Durham. You're going to have that potential for flooding. As far as the eastern part of the peninsula, Newport News over to Hampton and Poquoson, you are not under the flood watch. And the south side, Hampton Roads, northeast North Carolina, not under flood watch right now. But we're going to be watching in case we do get a few heavier, slow-moving storms late afternoon or evening, even across some of these western parts of the area. Plenty to watch. We've been dry across Hampton Roads this morning, but take a look up at Richmond again. You can see how that heavy rain started early this morning, and it just kept raining up there. There were some advisories and some flood warnings earlier. You can see the rainfall totals, about 2 inches in Richmond over the span of a couple hours. It amounts a little bit less, but still significant rain around Saluda and West Point, about a ½ an inch. We were drier across the south side and into North Carolina. All right, we're going to come back to Texas, and we're going to talk about the recovery efforts this morning. Those efforts are still underway in Texas, where the death toll from the flash flooding on July 4th continues to climb. There are now at least 110 confirmed deaths, and more than 160 people are still missing, which is much higher than originally thought. This time lapse shows just how fast the water from the Guadalupe River in Kerrville rose. It was just a matter of minutes. Texas Governor Greg Abbott now says an investigation into exactly what went wrong is underway. ABC's Christiane Cordero has details.
This morning, the race to find those missing in the Texas Hill Country enters its 6th day, with a steeper mountain to climb than originally thought. Officials say more than 170 people are still unaccounted for, more than 3 times higher than previously stated.
We will not stop until every missing person is accounted for.
Texas Governor Abbott believes the surge in the number of people missing is largely due to the holiday weekend, people staying in the area without registering at a camp or a hotel. And several family members, like Thad Hartfield, have taken it upon themselves to join the search efforts.
I'm just doing what a parent would do. Nothing else matters right now than to take this effort to find, my son and these other kids.
His 22-year-old son, Aiden, and a few of his friends and girlfriend were staying in Thad's second home on the 4th of July in Kerr County. And this morning, new questions about why the region wasn't better prepared. Public meeting records show Kerrville discussed installing a flood warning system as early as August 2016. And records obtained by ABC News also show how just 2 days before the flood, state officials signed off on emergency plans for Camp Mystic, where a number of children are still missing. When asked about whether he's placing blame on anyone, Abbott acknowledged an investigation will happen, adding this.
Who's to blame? Know this. That's the word choice of losers. The way winners talk is not to point fingers.
There are also questions about the future of FEMA after President Trump vowed to overhaul or even phase it out entirely. The agency immediately responded to the Texas floods, and Trump has since avoided discussing whether he has changed his plans for FEMA. Homeland Security Secretary Noem, who oversees FEMA, claims the administration is streamlining its response without offering specifics. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Washington.
As heart-wrenching as so many of those stories are and continue to be, there have also been some stories of survival coming out from this devastating flooding. We have days just, since this flooding occurred, more and more of these survival stories are showing up. And our sister station in San Antonio heard from one Kerrville family that rode out the storm in their attic.
Nestled along the Guadalupe River in Hunt, Casa del Rio has long been a place of peace. 94-year-old Betty Madison has lived here full-time since the early 80s.
We've had it since the 60s, and it was built in the 20s.
The 4th of July usually brings fireworks, swimming, watermelon, and fellowship. But this year, around 4 a.m., disaster came surging through their home.
Threw open our door and said, hey, we're flooded, we got to get out.
Barry, Betty's grandson, and several relatives and their dogs rushed into the attic as water came in.
We could hear screams everywhere. I saw probably the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life, which was the water coming up through the wooden floors and the cracks silently, very quickly.
When they looked outside at the river, cars trapped in rushing waters still had people inside.
There were cars with their headlights on with people in them screaming, going down the river at the second level.
Water began inching up the attic stairs. The family created a rope out of Christmas lights and tied them around the chimney, planning their escape. Then came a miracle. The water began to recede.
It dropped a foot, and then it dropped 3 feet, and then it kept going.
The whole time, Grandma Betty sat quietly, praying in a chair.
And Barry came by and he said, Noni, do you want to pray? And I said, yes. He prayed a beautiful prayer. Within a short time, probably 5-10 minutes, I'm not sure, the water began to recede.
Everyone eventually sheltered at a nearby church until that evening when the National Guard arrived to get them out.
At 94, she was pulling herself up.
When you're under pressure like that, you do a lot of things. I had help from the National Guard, but they told me to go up, so that was what I did.
The cottage, though battered, still stands. But Betty's only source of income is gone, and flood insurance was unaffordable. The family is now turning to the community for help. Their GoFundMe page has already raised more than $15,000.
She said this out loud, I want to live here and I want to die here.
I'll just pray for those that were left behind.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin says several of his family members were among the hundreds of people rescued from the flooding in Texas. He thanked the Texas National Guard for their swift response.
By the grace of God, my family was safe. I have to say there was moments when they weren't. They ended up being safe during the day. I arrived on the 4th after my July 4th activities here, and the response from the state of Texas was extraordinary. From their emergency management teams, from the governor, from the Texas National Guard. I mean, every resource was deployed. My family was safe, and so they offered to go get them immediately, and I said no. I've talked to them. My family is safe. Please go rescue these young campers from these places. And when everyone else has been attended to, like other people that are safe but stranded, we'll deal with my family. That evening, the Swiftwater Rescue Crews and the Texas National Guard were able to go in and get my family. I went with them and was just grateful, incredibly grateful that they were able to do that.
Governor Youngkin says his family was rescued from the Hunt area of Kerr County, And again, that was the same area where that other family we heard from rode out that storm in their attic. All right, humanitarian groups from Virginia have been on the ground in Texas for the past several days, helping survivors and first responders. The Virginia Beach Fire Department sent its swiftwater rescue team to the flood zone on Sunday. The group is trained in rope techniques, river rescues, and boat operations. The Mercy chefs from Portsmouth and a team from Operation Blessing in Virginia Beach are also in Kerrville. Volunteers are serving hot meals and handing out emergency supplies.
We're providing them with tools and equipment that they need so they can continue with the search and rescue for this tragic event. We open a kitchen there and we're making hot meals. From there, we distribute to the first responders and the families that need it.
Once search and rescue efforts officially end, Operation Blessing says their work will shift towards long-term recovery efforts like helping residents clear debris. Now, I want to show you again for the folks from our area that are in Kerrville and around that area helping with the recovery and some of the cleanup. The weather's okay right now. But, you know, Texas is not the only state dealing with some of these flooding issues and the flash flooding. You take a look at New Mexico and south of Albuquerque, there is some really, really devastating flooding news to report. There were 3 people in the southern New Mexico town that passed from flash flooding. The town is Rio Rioso. Sadly, 2 of those deaths include a 4-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. We're told the Rio Rioso rose to a record-breaking 20 feet, 3 inches. First responders conducted at least 50 swift water rescues. And I want to take a second here to talk a little bit more about the setup here as we come back out. I'll show you across New Mexico where exactly this area is as we zoom in again to the south of Albuquerque. It's a pretty good distance. Here's this little town, Rio Rioso. Now, it is a mountainous town. You can see the mountains out there, and just out to the west of that, as we take a look here, I want to show you how things look over the last 24 hours. And I'm going to back this up. I'm shuttling this backwards so you can see that heavy rain right there. Okay, this was yesterday afternoon. This tremendous amount of rain was falling over these mountains, and that rain funnels down through the canyons and creates a very, very rapid rise in the water levels there in the Rio Rioso. So they were only receiving, and when I say 2.5 to 3.5 inches, that's a tremendous amount of rain. But over that area, it's even more difficult. And a big part of the flooding that was set up, I can come back out on camera here just for a second. There was a burn scar from a wildfire there, the South Fork burn scar. That area that was burned, the ground was so scorched that it couldn't really absorb this heavy rainfall that fell in short order. So that 2.5 to 3.5 inches of rain that fell, it was like falling almost like on pavement. So rather than getting absorbed into soft ground because that ground was scorched and it was scarred, that ran off funneled through canyons and fed into that river. That river had a rise of 19 feet in about 30 minutes. So you think about it, that's almost like a wall of water coming down through some of these areas. And I mentioned that water level up to 20 feet, just 20 feet, 3 inches. The old record was just under 16 feet, and that occurred last year. So they've had a couple serious flooding situations. But again, unfortunately for this small town in New Mexico, it turned deadly. And our hearts again going out to all those dealing with that. All right, we are going to take a look at the tropics, and we'll take this full so I can get over to the big board and talk a little bit more about this. You can see as we check in on the tropics, things are pretty quiet down in the Gulf. As we take a look, there is a little bit of convection here down around the Bay of Campeche. That's kind of drifting to the north. It is not well organized, and it's already interacting with land. Hurricane Center is not concerned with that. As we look across the Caribbean, that is largely quiet. A little bit of storminess here in the northern part of the Caribbean, but nothing that is organized, nothing that is showing any signs of development. And the rest of the tropical Atlantic basin all the way across over towards Cabo Verde, the islands there, and back over off the coast of Africa, things are looking pretty quiet. As we look in over off the eastern Pacific, it's kind of interesting. You know, we've had so much activity. Yesterday, a couple areas we were watching, those areas kind of brought down a little bit. We went from 20 and 30% chances for development a couple days ago down to 10% yesterday. And as of this morning, Hurricane Center not worried about anything over there either. So no tropical activity expected over the next 7 days. So we've been talking about this. We'll continue to watch that and remind you that we do have the hurricane season running through November. We're right here, so we're just really getting started. The peak is September 10th. Now, we're going to get back into the international weather, but with all the talk of flooding, we've been reminded over the last week with the flash flooding about just how deadly this type of weather can be. Meteorologist Taylor Stephenson explains why the flash flooding has been so dangerous in your Flash Flood Fast Facts.
Flash flooding is one of the top 3 weather-related killers in the U.S. Let's break down some flash flood fast facts. By definition, a flash flood is rapidly flowing high water in a typically dry area that is likely to cause flooding within 6 hours or less. According to the National Severe Storms Laboratory, flash flooding is the most dangerous type of flooding due to the flood's destructive power and speed. Flash floods are more common in urban areas than in rural areas. Buildings and concrete promote runoff because the water can't be soaked into the ground easily. The runoff causes a buildup of water, leading to a higher risk of flash flooding. Low-lying and poor drainage areas are also susceptible to flooding. Flash flooding is also more common during the spring and summer. Data from the Weather Prediction Center shows that between 2007 and 2017, on average, 3/4 of flash floods were reported between late April and mid-September. Flooding is the second highest weather-related killer in the U.S., with heat as the #1 weather-related killer. For 13 News Now, I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson.
Important to note, the warmer the atmosphere, the more capacity it has to carry more moisture, and that's why we get a lot of the flash flooding during the hotter times. And speaking of the heat, we're going to turn our attention over to Europe. This is a satellite image, but let's look at some temperatures, because across southern parts of Europe, and specifically we'll turn our attention back over to Greece and Athens, it has been very, very hot. In fact, it got so hot in Greece yesterday, officials made the decision to temporarily close the Acropolis in Athens. We're talking about temperatures that were above 100 degrees. Mandatory breaks have also been put in place for outdoor workers across the country. Right now, Athens is at 99. So another really hot day there in Greece. Interesting stuff. All right, we're going to turn our attention back here to the States and talk to you about the severe weather outlook. As we take a look, you can see some wet weather back across parts of the Ohio River Valley. I mentioned we've got a couple areas with that kind of elevated level 2 risk. One includes parts of the western and northern parts of our viewing area. The other one back across the north central U.S. I will tell you the greater threat for stronger winds is back across South Dakota up into the southernmost parts of North Dakota and Nebraska. There we could find some areas with gusts in excess of 75 miles per hour. We do have the primary threat from severe storms in our region, also those gusty winds, but our winds are more likely to be on the order of 55 to say 60 or so with some of the storm's outflow. There's also a slightly elevated risk of tornadoes across the Dakotas, both North and South Dakota. And then you've got that hail potential as well. Hail 2 inches or more in diameter potentially across this same area. Large hail, though, could develop anywhere down across Nebraska or Kansas, and there might be a little bit of hail potentially out across western parts of Virginia or North Carolina. That's for today. Tomorrow you see the hail threat across the central part of the country. Again, more wind potentially for that part of the country and down to our south and southwest. Hampton Roads kind of on the edge of that elevated risk for stronger storms tomorrow. You can see down across central parts of North Carolina and South Carolina, the threat is greater there. There's a severe weather outlook. As I mentioned, we do have that level 2 threat again for these parts of the country, and we'll see those chances for storms developing. I expect more heavy rain, potential for flooding here in the mid-Atlantic for central parts of Virginia, North Carolina. Some of these storms really, really heavy through this evening, and that could trigger some of those flood warnings that we were talking about a bit earlier. Things should be drier out to the west. They need the break. Here we're going to see potential more unsettled weather into Thursday, late Thursday and Thursday night as well. I do think things will start to improve a little bit over the weekend. Take a look at the high temperatures yesterday, 96 in Norfolk. It was so steamy. Today, we're going to be more like the lower 90s. We'll see a mix of clouds and sunshine. Great beach day. You take a look at the conditions out there from the Thompson Creek Window Company. You can see the waves crashing there. Some surfers out trying to catch a few of those waves down there near the jetty. 84 southwest winds at 16 miles per hour. Dew points in the mid-70s. Beach forecast. The rip current threat is low. I would say low to moderate. Maybe you could see a few higher swells coming in. Surf height officially forecast to be around 2 feet. But again, it wouldn't surprise me to see a couple bigger ones coming in from time to time. UV index very high. Out on the water, yesterday we had small craft advisory up for parts of the bay, and we were watching around those storms. I will still tell you, northern sections of the bay through the central part of the bay really need to stay weather aware with storm chances later this afternoon and this evening. But for our area, early on, things looking pretty good. It may be a little breezy. Do be careful and do check the radar before heading out. More storms possible later today. Take a look at our futurecast, and you can see how things develop here. Again, across the area, chances for storms north and west as we get into the evening. They push into our area. These are heavier areas of rain that are going to be a little slower moving and kind of set up where we could get what we call kind of a training effect. Think about train cars rolling down the track where you get one cell followed by another, followed by another. That's how those rain totals can really add up over 1 inch to 2 inches under some of those heavier cells where you get one right after the other. So we'll be watching for some of that potentially. Tomorrow, more development down to the south and to the southeast. Still a chance for a few stronger storms tomorrow as well. The pattern will continue to be a little unsettled as we look at rainfall projections. This is just one of the models, but you can see 2 to 4 inches in some areas, 1 to 2 around Norfolk. There will be lighter amounts for some areas, but if you get caught under a heavier storm and it's a slow mover, look for those rain totals to rise up pretty quickly. Now, some of the other models here, I showed you the projection there for Norfolk. That was with the graph model, 1 to 1.15 inches there for Norfolk, specifically at the airport. The Euro about 1 2/3 inches, a little bit more than 1 inch for the NAM and the GFS as well. The Canadians thinking that those storms are going to miss the airport. We'll see. All right, grass pollen is moderate as we take a look at the forecast today. Low to mid-90s across the area. Mix of clouds and sunshine. Not too bad, but late afternoon and into the evening, keep an eye to the radar. I think we will see some showers and storms, especially to the north and out to the west. Down across northeast North Carolina, lesser chances for storms down that way, at least for most of the day. Maybe late evening, we could see a few stray storms down to the south. All right, overnight tonight, lows near 79, isolated storms, otherwise partly cloudy tomorrow. We continue with our weather impact alert, highs near 90, but the potential for those stray, just scattered storms during the afternoon, some could produce flooding rains. We'll also see chances for scattered showers and storms on Friday. By Saturday and Sunday, it's more isolated, and I think we start to see some breaks into early next week. But you'll definitely want to stay up on the forecast and keep checking the radar. And you know the best way to do that is by scanning this QR code and downloading the 13 News Now mobile app. It's a free app, and you will have access to the latest news, traffic, and weather on the go. It's a great resource, and we certainly hope you take advantage of it. Thanks for spending the last half hour with us here from the Weather Desk. Again, I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. Stay weather aware. It seems like we've had so much to talk about nationally and even internationally. We'll continue each and every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. looking for the big weather stories from across the region, across the country, and around the world. Again, I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.